IVM.
It's 1958. The Supreme Court is petitioned not by one, not by two, not by three, but 3,000 butchers. 3,000 mostly illiterate butchers have filed a petition with their thumb impressions. They've come together, though they live apart in far flung villages and towns throughout the states of Bombay, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Bihar. And this was 1958. There was no WhatsApp. How did they get together and what did they want from the Supreme Court? Hello and welcome to the show, The Longest Constitution. My name is Priya Mirza, and in every episode, we come a step closer and a little deeper in looking at how the Constitution affects our everyday life. From sexual harassment to finding ourselves out of work to looking at forms of work very different from the ones we do. In this episode, we're not just looking at people, but animals and forests and predators. Sexual predators and feline ones, not the domestic cat, but bigger ones like tigers. And a little hockey, the games people play. But first, Nisha Bhatia, a senior law officer, attempted suicide in the reception of the Prime Minister's office. What and why? So Nisha worked as a senior officer in the research and analysis wing, that's raw, but she alleged that her colleagues tried to coerce her into a sex racket and made wild comments like, "Why are you worried about your career and children? You should find yourself a man to have fun with." You. Nisha filed a complaint of sexual harassment. And this was in 2008, and the Vishaka Guidelines on Sexual Harassment 1997 mandated the setting up of an internal complaints committee. And that when a complaint is made, and pay attention here, required a third party, either an NGO or another body who is familiar with the issue of sexual harassment, to look into the matter. But this was not done. And when Nisha refused to comply with this tardy, lousy way of dealing with something serious, she attempted suicide. But even that was turned against her. Here is what the PMO's office did: they publicized her case. The Cabinet Secretariat, through the Press Information Bureau, released a press note carrying the title "Fact Sheet on Suicide Attempt by Miss Nisha Priya Bhatia," describing the incident and her complaints against her colleagues and the state of her mental and psychological condition. They declare that she is mentally unfit. What? So, the question: to what degree are our employers liable for creating a safe, unprejudiced environment for women to work with? In 2013, Parliament passed the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace Act, which clearly recognized that these are constitutional rights, that sexual harassment results in the violation of the fundamental rights of a woman to equality under Articles 14 and 15 of the Constitution, and her right to life and dignity under Article 21. But most importantly, her right to practice any profession, occupation, trade, or business. And with that, we move on to other predators, tigers. But this story starts with people. The Baiga people, forest dwellers. Now, in the last episode, we saw how the British prohibited the Adivasis from plucking, collecting, and selling maua ke phool. Arre? And under the Maua Act 1892, the British regulated the manufacture of alcohol from maua for their own revenue. But the flowers are just the tip of the iceberg, literally. Who do they belong to is the question. Starting from 1865, the British passed a law claiming rights over entire forests, gradually assuming magisterial powers over the people living in them, to a point that forest dwellers could be arrested on the mere grounds of suspicion. So, forest dwellers or Adivasis, tribals, known as Vanyajati or those of the forest community, for whom forests are not just the source of life but also livelihood. Now, in the Constituent Assembly, it was Jaipal Singh Munda who would have had a million Instagram followers if there was Instagram back then. A tribal from present day Jharkhand, Munda graduated from St. John's College, Oxford, in economics. Wow. Joined the ICS. Wow. He quit the ICS. Wow. Who does that? He was captain of the Indian field hockey team, which won the gold medal in the 1928 Summer Olympics in Amsterdam. Whoa. But more importantly, in the Constituent Assembly, Munda championed the rights of the Adivasis for their homeland, a home for tribals. And when the Constitution was being drafted, that's what the Constitution guaranteed them by the fifth schedule of our Constitution, which operates in the majority tribal districts outside the Northeast and gives the center, hear this out, greater powers to intervene in the interests of the socio-economic development of the scheduled tribes. Oh, but in the freezing winter of 2009, people of the Baiga tribal community in Mungeli and Bilaspur of Chhattisgarh were turned out of their homes. The Baiga people live in forests, and that was their home, but now they were being told to leave. To live in cement row box like houses with little light and water because of the government notification that their home was now a tiger reserve. The Achanakamar Tiger Reserve. What? And with that, we go back to the butchers who petitioned the Supreme Court that they were out of work. But why would they be doing that? And now a little bit about cows. Lots of animals here today. Now, cows worshipped as well as consumed. And apart from being eaten, the slaughter of large animals is also a small economy of leather and animal products. But most explosively, the issue of cow slaughter was mired up with Bakri Eid, when Muslims symbolically slaughter an animal. But that's once a year. The everyday part of this economy was as food, belts, boots, and bags. But anyway, the British were the largest consumers of beef, and there was no way that they would prohibit this. But when the time came to draft our constitution, this came up. And many members insisted that the state must do its utmost to prevent the slaughter of cows, which is a religious sentiment of Hindus. Now, the father of our nation, Gandhi, I really wish we would listen to what he had to say more mindfully and not reduce him to a cleanliness freak. But Gandhi himself was insistent that cow slaughter could not be stopped by law. Cow protection is a noble sentiment, he thought too, but he also felt that, and here I quote him, it must grow by patient toil and tapasya. It cannot be imposed upon anyone. But in our constitution, Article 48 directs the state to the organization of agriculture, animal husbandry on modern scientific lines, as well as prohibiting the slaughter of cows and calves. And that's what the states of UP, Bihar, and Birar promptly did. They banned cow slaughter in the name of animal preservation, except that it put the Qurayshis out of work. This community of butchers, and it also made related industries collapse. Tanning, hiding, leather. In the case Muhammad Hanif Qureshi versus State of Bihar 1958, the Supreme Court upheld a majority of the cow slaughter laws, ruling that a ban on cow slaughter did not restrict the freedom of religion or even the right to a trade or profession held by the petitioners. The court also said that such a ban could not be absolute and that some categories of cattle, such as aged or unproductive cows, may be slaughtered. But the problem was that the Supreme Court saw this as a majorly religious problem when it was about their livelihood. Meanwhile, in a radical interpretation of employer liability in Nisha Priya Bhatia versus Union of India 2020, the court ordered the center to pay within 6 weeks a 1 lakh compensation to Nisha for the violation of a fundamental right and for the improper handling of her complaint of sexual harassment. What is really important is that the judgment recognizes that regardless of whether her allegation is proved or not, A woman, as a matter of constitutional right, can claim compensation from her employer for a hostile workplace. And what happened to the Baiga community and their right to livelihood? You will have to wait for the next episode. But the takeaway for today's show is that not everyone has a degree or qualifications, and millions of people rely on their traditional lifestyles for their livelihood. Did you like the show? You can follow me on Twitter, where I tweet at FundamentallyP, and on Instagram, The Longest Constitution. Until next time, this is me, Priya Mirza, signing out.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to the founder of Radiance Clinic, Dr. Falguni Shah. She shares 3 must-do things for healthy and glowing skin. On The Longest Constitution, Priya delves into the state-wise regulation of trade, sale, and consumption of alcohol. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshav describes the serene 100-kilometer journey between Leh and the Lamayaru Monastery. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth shares 3 lessons we can learn from Hajime Isayama, the creator of the super hit anime show Attack on Titans. And on All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk observe humanitarian corridors and their existence in times of war, both in the current and historical contexts. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you might be listening to us on. And do check us out on YouTube. We're building a whole bunch of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And we're also doing a small listener survey, which we would really appreciate your help with. It helps us kind of talk to advertisers. So you could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It'll just take a couple of minutes and it would be really helpful to us. We do appreciate this. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance and the India Water Portal. Thank you so much for making this possible.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार